There was a time where I was drowning in debt because I trusted someone that was supposed to be an expert, a tax professional, to manage my taxes. And so whether you have a business or not, being informed is so important. Because if you don't know the information and you pay somebody to take care of things for you, they have room to make decisions that aren't in your best interest. And when it comes to my business taxes, the enrolled agent that I had hired for 3 years changed his story in the last year and did something that I never thought was possible. And so you're about to see a very vulnerable video where I was in the midst of things. I was getting letters from the IRS saying I owed them thousands of dollars. And I had no clue what was going on because my enrolled agent told me, "Don't worry, Darcy, I'm gonna figure it out." And so me being small time, I thought I wouldn't have to worry. But with Steve Harvey as a perfect example, the more money you make, the more you have to know your stuff in all areas of business. Let's start December 2020. And that's when I decided to start my business. I had a series of failed attempts in the corporate world, and I told myself I needed ownership. I needed to create something that no one else could take away from me. At that time, I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that I wanted to be an owner in a world full of buyers. And so as an owner, there's certain responsibilities that you need to do. And so I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm serious about this business. And so I'm going to hire a professional. And so initially when I first got started, I was like, I need to go with a CPA, a certified public accountant, to do my taxes. But then I found out about enrolled agents. And I was like, oh, enrolled agents receive their certification from the IRS. And so if I were to get audited or anything like that, I would be taken care of because the enrolled agent is supposed to be specialized within that role. And so when trying to find somebody to do my taxes, I had about 4 or 5 interviews. Most of them went well, but I decided to settle on this one guy. This one guy was affordable and he seemed like he knew what he was talking about. And so overall, I was happy and I felt like I was getting a really good deal. And so he filed my personal and business taxes in April of 2021 for the very first time. And so when he filed my taxes, there weren't really any problems. It seemed like we got along well. I was able to go to his house in person and give him all of my tax form. About a year passes, I grow my YouTube channel. I continue to grow my business. I'm learning more skills to help me get a higher paying job. Things are going pretty well. And so in April of 2022, I asked the same guy to file my taxes. I don't really think there were any real issues, but for 2022, I moved to a completely different state. And so when he did my taxes, I just felt like some of the things I said, he wasn't completely understanding. And so the in-person experience I got last year didn't match up with the virtual experience I was getting this year. And so I was like, in 2023, I'm going to try to make sure I find somebody in the state that I'm living so I can see them file my taxes in person. Now let's fast forward another year to April of 2023. My circumstances this year look a lot different than the 2 years before. I had moved to a different state, even farther away this time. In addition, I had made a lot more money. And I say all this because it played a huge role in the series of unfortunate events that happened. When I saw how much he said I owed, I was like, nope, that must not be right. There's no way I could owe that much money. And so I was like, hey, how can I reduce my tax bill? Are there any strategies that I don't really know about? In turn, he gave me this long list of business expenses. And that's when I stumbled upon an SEP IRA. An SEP IRA stands for a Simplified Employee Pension Plan. And so with an SEP IRA, you can contribute up to 25% of your business earnings or $66,000 even after the calendar year is up. And so in April, I was like, oh wow, I can contribute to my SEP IRA and I can significantly reduce my tax bill. And so I told my enrolled agent that I thought that this was the best strategy for me. He said, great, you can do this, but I'll need to file an extension. Little did I know, not only was I racking up late fees for not paying the business taxes owed in April, I was also racking up daily state fees. Fast forward a few months, that's when September and October comes around. And that is a time when things went really, really wrong. I was minding my business one Friday night when I get an email in my inbox that I never would have expected. And the subject of the email said, tax return accepted. And I looked at it and I paused. I was like, how could this be? I never gave my enrolled agent permission to file my taxes. We were still in the discussion phase where we were going back and forth and saying like, hey, this needs to be updated, this needs to be corrected. How in the world was it possible that my taxes was filed? At the time, I wasn't too worried. I was like, there must have been a mistake. Something must have happened. Something must have gone wrong. So I was just like, okay, no worries. My tax person is going to handle it. And so the next day, he sends a message and says, oh, something happened with my tax system. In some kind of way, your taxes was filed. Don't worry, Darcy. Like, I'll take care of it. I will file another tax return. And it will be like I filed it right at the very beginning. And so hearing that, I was like, okay, maybe something went wrong. Maybe things will work itself out. That should have been my first clue that I needed to run. And I think the reason why he filed my taxes like this is because I got a second opinion. As mentioned earlier, he said that I owed a lot of money in taxes, and I wasn't okay with that amount because I knew that there were tax strategies that I could do to reduce my tax bill. And so I sought out a second opinion. And so I reached out to that company, they assessed the information, and they gave me my tax returns back. When I compared both tax returns, they did look very similar, but the accounting firm had additional tax savings that I could do. I then let my enrolled agent that I'd been working with for 3 years now, I let him know, hey, here was a tax suggestion by this other company. Do you mind adding that in to the tax return that you do? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so I thought he was okay, but I never should have told him that I was getting a second opinion. And I believe because I did that, he was upset with me and wanted to therefore take me down because of it. October 10th, I received a notice from the IRS saying that my tax return had been accepted. And so this gave me the understanding that it was my amended tax return. Around mid-November is when I get a surprise letter in the mail from the IRS. It says I still owe about $1,000. And so I look at it and I'm like, there must be something wrong. And so I scan the document and I send it to my enrolled agent. I say, hey, what's going on with this? And he's like, Darcy, don't worry at all. It's probably based off the initial amendment, but you have no need to worry. It's going to correct itself because I filed a new amendment for you. It's going to be all fine. And so I was like, okay, I know it says I owe thousands of dollars, but no worries here because I trust my enrolled agent. So now let's fast forward a couple more days. So it was mid-November. Now it's late November of 2023. I get more notices in the mail now. And so not only am I hearing from the federal government, I'm also hearing from one of the state governments that I lived in 2022. And they're saying I owe a couple of $1,000s as well. That's when I get worried. I'm like, the federal government says I owe thousands. The state government says I owe thousands. There's something that isn't right here. We need to talk. And so my enrolled agent and I get on the phone. I voice my concerns and he proceeds to reassure me and say, Darcy, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. And so I hear him and I want to believe him because I know I'm not a tax expert and I know sometimes things take time. So I was like, okay, he's reassuring me over the phone that everything is going to be okay. And so we end that call and I'm feeling pretty confident about things. I think that although they're not good right now, they're going to eventually work itself out. And so December comes and goes. I celebrate the holidays. I don't worry about my taxes. Also, I go back home to Texas. And so because I went back home, I wasn't receiving the mail in the state that I was living in. And so when I finally do go back, I'm greeted with more mail. And guess what was in my mail? More notices! And guess you got it right. There were more notices, but this time it was saying I owed even more money. As when you owe the government and the state money, they like to get interest. And so some states have compounded interest daily, which means that you're owing money every single day that you're not paying it back. And so when I saw that I owed even more money in January, I reached back out to my enrolled agent and said, we need to talk. There is something that's not right here. And so we go back and forth with email communications. We're finally able to set up a meeting for early February. At this time, I have a full-time job and I have a full-time business. And so I'm managing a lot right now and trusting that somebody I pay good money to and is certified by the IRS to take care of my taxes. Fortunately for me, I was able to get on a phone call with one of my close friends. I was voicing my frustrations over my whole entire tax situation and she was like, Darcy, I actually have someone I can recommend to you. but they are another enrolled agent. Do you want me to maybe share his information with you? And I asked her, I was like, hey, is he actually good? Like, does he care about his clients? And she was like, yeah, he's done my taxes for like 5 years. He's really good. He cares about people. And so because she's a close friend and I trust her opinion, I was like, okay, I'll give him a call. And so I proceeded to call him the next day. I'm able to get through, and unfortunately for him, I dumped this all on him. I'm like, I'm in a bad tax situation. I'm getting notices left and right. I feel trapped. I'm drowning in this debt, and I just don't know what to do. Like, what should I do? And he told me, he was like, you need to talk to the person you're currently working with and ask him what system did he use, and also ask him to help you pay for these fees that keep growing day after day because he hasn't done his job. And I heard this and I was like, are you sure I should ask for him to help pay for this stuff? And the guy was like, yeah, you should ask him to pay for this stuff and to tell you what system he's using. So on February 5th, I'm going into the call with my current enrolled agent with all this like energy, like, you did me wrong, you messed me up, how are you going to make this right? And so when I take the call, I'm like, hey, like, what happened? Like, it looks like there was a huge error, and you told me you had messed up with filing my taxes, and now I owe thousands more dollars. How are you going to make this right? And he proceeded to say, it's not my fault. I didn't make a mistake. And then I was like, you said you made a mistake. You said you filed my taxes wrong. And he was like, no, I didn't make a mistake. It was my system. My system filed your taxes. And then I was like, your system filed my taxes? What system did you use? And then he was like, I'm not going to tell you. If you messed up with your clients, would you tell them? And then I told him, yes, if I was in the wrong, if I made a huge mistake that cost my client thousands of dollars, I would make it right. And he was like, well, I'm not going to tell you. He said, I'm ending this call. Can no longer work with each other. I'm going to refund you the amount that you paid, and we're no longer going to talk to each other. And so on February 5th, after our video call, he refunded me the money and said, I am no longer working with you. You need to take care of this tax problem yourself. And so after that happened, I felt so lost and confused. I'm like, what do I do now? Who do I talk to? Who do I go to? Who's going to help me out of this situation? And so I looked to try to find a couple of accountants in my area. I wasn't able to really get through to anybody. And then I was like, maybe I should use my friend's referral. I know he's an enrolled agent, just like that other guy that messed me over, but maybe I should try to give him a chance because my friend uses him. And so I thought it over for a week or so, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give this guy a chance. Hopefully it works out. And so I call this new guy up and I say, hey, do you mind helping me try to get out of this situation? He said, yes, I will help you out. Just send me all your tax returns, all your profit and loss statements, your balance sheet. He also recommended that I call the state government and figure out what was going on while he worked through all my paperwork. And so now let's fast forward from early February to mid-February. I'm finally able to get through to a contact that works at the Office of Tax and Revenue. And so I walked them through. I'm like, hey, I'm getting tax returns that say I owe this amount. Like, what is going on? Could you help me out and help me understand? And they were like, you owe this money. You need to pay this money as quickly as possible. And I was like, why do I owe more money? And so when I was talking on the phone, they were very short with me. They didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to explain anything. They were like, you need to talk to your tax person. And I was like, I can't talk to him anymore. He's no longer filing taxes on my behalf. And they're like, I don't care. You owe this money. And I was like, how do I know how much I actually owe if the amount keeps increasing? They're just like, oh, just need to figure it out. And so I probably talked to different people within the office either 4 or 5 times. I had been hung up on. I had been told, ma'am, I can no longer help you. Ma'am, I need to talk with other people. I am spending too much time on you. I need to talk to somebody else. And so trying to get a hold of a person in the tax office was rough, let alone trying to get in contact with someone who was open to helping me. Because really, they were just like, I don't want to help you, ma'am. Another thing that's important to mention is that during this time, while I'm trying to get in contact with the Tax and Revenue Office, I got another notice from the state saying that I owe $2,000 more. And I'm like, what is going on? What is happening to me? Like, I owed only a few thousand. Now I owe a couple more thousand? Like, what is going on? I don't understand. And I come to find out, right before the previous enrolled agent stopped working with me, he filed another tax return without my permission. he filed another tax return without my permission. And he said he filed it because I gave him verbal permission. I never gave this guy verbal permission. And so he filed my taxes without my permission and without my signature the first time. And now he's filing it based off saying I gave him verbal permission. And so I just felt like I was drowning in that situation and there was nobody there to really help me. But maybe this one person that my friend recommended. Now let's fast forward to March. The more money that I owe, it has collected even more interest. I'm receiving more notices from the state. At this point, I'm like, my credit's going to be ruined. They might garnish my wages. The people at the state aren't talking to me. They aren't sending documentation like they said that they were going to send. And when I meet somebody in person, they're saying I need additional paperwork. And so around mid-March, I have lost hope in escaping this situation. And I'm just like, should I just pay this money and like let it go and just hope that my old enrolled agent won't file another tax return or that the government won't decide that I owe thousands of more dollars? Like, what do I do at this point? And so I spoke with the new enrolled agent. He was like, Darcy, I'm working on your case. I'm working to talk to the tax office. We're going to get this situation solved for you. Now let's fast forward to April. It's around mid-April when 2023 taxes is due. And mind you, I still haven't done 2022. So I asked for another extension with the new enrolled agent for 2023 while we still try to get 2022 done. And so around the end of April, I go back to the tax office. I walk up there, I get a ticket, I sit down, I wait a good 30 to 45 minutes to hopefully be able to talk to someone. And I get assigned to this lady. I tell her my situation. I tell her like, I've been going through it. It's been hard. I want to be a good citizen. I just want to pay the taxes that I rightfully owe. And so she heard my case and she was like, Darcy, I'm going to help you out. And so what she did is she printed out the tax returns that were filed on my behalf. And what she told me shocked me. She told me that only 2 returns had been filed. 2 returns. The first return that was filed without my permission and incorrectly, and then the late January tax filing. Those were the only 2 tax returns that they had, which meant that my old enrolled agent, he never filed the amendment in October. He never did. When I heard that, I didn't want to believe it. I was just like, no, it cannot be. It cannot be. I was shocked. I was shocked. I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I took it because she had the proof. She was like, here are the 2 tax returns that we have for you. And so neither of them were correct and neither of them were done with my permission. And the reason why I owed even more money after he filed this second amendment is because he said I lived in one state that whole entire year, when in fact I lived in 2 states and worked in another state. He must have sabotaged the situation. There was no good reason for him to put the states correctly on the first amendment and file it wrong on the second amendment. And so now I'm sitting here with 2 amendments that were done incorrectly, which means that the other state that I lived in, he also filed wrong. So now I had to go back to my new enrolled agent and file a new tax return in the state that I was living in and a new tax return in the old state that I was living in, and then just sit and wait. And so once I got that other tax return updated, I was then able to bring it to the state that I currently live in and say, hey, here's proof that I didn't actually live in your state for the whole entire year. And so finally, after 2 weeks after sending them updated tax returns, I finally get a notice saying that I owe about $200 in fees and penalties. I see that tax return and I just stare at it. I'm like, I've been spending over 8 months trying to get this right. I feel like so many people just pay it off. Even though they don't have the money, they just pay it so they just don't have to worry about it. And so I saw it and I was just like, was it all worth it? Was the stress and hassle worth it to finally get a tax return that accurately reflected how much I owed? And so I was worn down so much. Door after door was being closed. A lot of people did not want to help me. But fortunately, I had somebody on my side and I was able to get the correct amount that I owed. And so I have paid the amount. I'm still waiting to hear from the other states, but they have told me it takes 6 months to process old tax returns. So unofficially, officially, the door hasn't been fully closed, but for the most part, I paid what I owed. And so that was my 2022 tax situation. It was very rough. At the end of the day, although I went through that pain, frustration, and stress, I do not regret owning a business. I do not regret all the people I've been able to reach because of this business. And so I still have hope. I still have encouragement. management. And so I just want you to know, as a business owner, I know you're busy, but we have to know all areas of our business. Yes, we can hire out experts to do what they do best, but we gotta know all areas of our business. And so as a business owner, we grow so much because every aspect of who we are is tested and tried. At the end of the day, we are better people that are constantly learning and growing because we have a business. Please let me know if you have any questions at all in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Peace, stay building.